be. Okay. Thank you for inviting me to speak here about textile research and archaeological textiles, because this is a very special field of research which usually archaeologists are not so concerned with, because usually textiles don't survive in our climatic conditions. Usually when something is put into the ground, then everything decays. For example, if I would die now and I'm buried, then yeah, my bones will survive, also this and my glasses and my hairpins and some parts of my shoes, but everything what is of flesh, of hair and of textiles will decay. And there are only some specific reasons why textiles can survive from prehistoric times, and I will show some of them just to set it into a context. Textiles, of course, can be preserved in the ice. You might know Ötzi, the man in the ice. He was found more than 30 years ago, and he is from the Stone Age, and he was found as a full body mummy with all of his belongings. The ice is really wonderful, but now a lot of ice is melting, and a lot of even prehistoric things come to light now. Yeah, the other reason why I'm here is, of course, the salt mine Halštat. You see here we have the bags, we have all of those hats and other items that are made of wool, of leather and of wood that are still there in the salt mine because of the salt. We have it not only in Halštat, but also in Dürnberg or in Iran. There is a salt mine, Cherabat, where we found a complete mummy of a mummified person with his garments. And this is also in the same age like the Celts here. It's 400 BC. Also a quite interesting thing. Other kinds of preservation are the bogs, for example in Huldremose in Denmark. This is very famous, you might know that. We have no bogs here in Central Europe where we found textiles or prehistoric people. Maybe this is because we don't use the bogs for using the turf for firing, and so we are not exploiting bogs here because we have a lot of wood. But I'm quite sure that there are a lot of bog mummies somewhere around, but we did not find them so far. I'm quite sure. But in this case, Huldremose and other stuff, they have wonderful, complete garments that are preserved in the bogs, and this is really a very interesting thing. Another condition on preservation is the mineralization. And here we also come near to the Bücheskala cave, where also in the Bücheskala cave we found some textiles that look like that. Textiles can survive if they are near a metal item and when they are buried in the ground, and if every climatic condition and the pH value and whatever is very specific, then the textile can survive because it just corrodes onto the metal object. It mineralizes. And this can look like that. That means we have all of the structure of the textile, we know what quality it is. Sometimes we also know what is the fiber behind, but what we don't have usually is the color. Sometimes we have it. Here you see some color, it's a bit red here, but usually it's just, rusty, rusted on, and so we don't have color. What else do we have from prehistory in Central Europe are some depictions. From the Stone Age we have figurines like that. They are very common here in this area as well, in Moravia. I know you have a lot. And I think in Znomyo, in the museum, you see rooms of. What else we have? We have this Situle They are not common here, but for example in Slovenia, but also in Austria and in northern Italy. And on the Citule they are between 400 and 600 before Christ. You find a lot of depictions of people and they look like small comics. They are really, really nice. And we can also use them to get information on how the garments looked like, and also patterns are there, even ribbons you can see, the hats and so on. And we can compare this with all of the finds, the tiny fragments we have from the salt mine. Yes, and south of the Alps, of course, we have the Etruscan stuff with all of these wonderful figurines and tomb paintings and so on. And I must say, we from the zone north of the Alps, we are always a bit jealous about what they have, but we have to take what we can get for our research. Very important are the textile tools. That means the items you need to make a textile. Here we have spindle wheels to make the thread. These are loom wakes, and this is a hackle just to prepare the raw material. I will talk about this later. What can we do with this? We can have a lot of ideas about the technology behind. We have about the aesthetic, the design, what patterns did the people use, in what time frame, but also about what functions textiles had in prehistoric times. Because we have a lot of different functions. It's not only to have garments, there are a lot of more. For me, from the technical aspect, it's really very interesting that spinning and weaving has a very long history, because to use a hand spindle to make a thread goes back to the beginnings of the Stone Age, the Neolithic. That means the first farmers, when they came here, it's about 5,500 before Christ, they brought this technology with them, the spinning and the basics of weaving, and since then garments are made in this kind. Here we have a loom. This is a loom like it looked like in the Iron Age, but the hand spindle like this is really also known for the Neolithic, for the farmer cultures. This is just a mapping on what technique do we have in what time period. Here you see the very simple style of weaving, and here the more complex ones. This is twill, this is tabby, this is just one over the other and so on. And the very simple ones we have in the Bronze Age and of course in the Neolithic. And also the dyeing, the stripes and so on. It was just developed around 1500 before Christ. But interestingly, in the Bronze Age, that means in the 2nd millennium BC, we have a very simple textile culture. We have just the beginnings, the first beginnings of dyeing, the first beginnings of embroidery, the first other patterning techniques. But it's just so, try and error. It's more or less very simple textiles. You see here the different. Here, this is tabby weave, the basic, simplest type of weaving, and you need this loom to do this. You have just one shaft, you have different threads, and every second thread is on the shaft, and then you just move it like this, put the thread through, and you can weave. This is quite simple. But to make a textile like this, you need a very complicated machine. You need more shafts. You have to think about how to hang all of those threads on the shafts, because and then the manipulation. First you have to take those and then put the thread in, then you have to take those and so on. It gets complicated and you have to think a lot, you have to concentrate a lot. For this you just do it. For this you have to think and how to sort, and especially if you are doing patterns, then you have to think a lot and you have to stay with your brain with it. You cannot be interrupted by a child or whatever, because it's more time in it. And you need, for the same size of cloth, from this and from this you need much more time. in the preparation of the loom and in the weaving. You need more than 3 times longer for the same amount of cloth. That means it gets complicated. And this we know, the multi-shaft loom, we know from the Middle Bronze Age on, from 1500 before Christ. And then when it starts with patterns. For example, here, this is the earliest striped pattern that we have in Central Europe. This is Franzhausen. It's 4,000 years old. That means 2000 BC. This was found in this grave among these metal items. And we have the first tablet weaving. This is the tablet weaving, but not this pattern. Tablet weaving, it's on here. It's from Halštat, and you see the date. It's 1400 BC. And then something very interesting happens. You have here the sheen again, just to highlight. You see what happens here. This here is the Halštat period. This is the time period of the Büchiskala cave, of the rituals in the Büchiskala cave. And you see here happens, great things are happening here. There is a boom of creativity, of art, of understanding of aesthetics and design, a desire for beautiful things. This is really what happens here, what we see here. You see, it gets complicated. You have different weave types. You have a lot of embroidery and patterning and stripes and checks and dyeing. 2/3 of every textile from Halštat salt mine is dyed from the Iron Age. It means really they had some need for that. And we also see here, this is the Halštat textiles. I did not Photoshop, they really look like that. Yeah, I mean, usually we are not allowed to put full light on them because it would harm it, but it's really how they look like. You see a lot of different colors, a lot of different patterns, and also a lot of different qualities and different weave structures. All of those boxes are here 2 by 2 centimeters of one textile. And here this is 4 centimeters and so on. That means they are from the same size. And so you see the different qualities. You see very fine textiles, coarser textiles, also here a coarse one. Then you see the patterns, the wrap bands, the tablet woven bands. This textile, for example, it has 40 threads per centimeter. People who know what this means know what this means. This is really a lot. Also, a lot of creativity in here. Yeah, and this also has a meaning, because why did people do like that? Here another one. I just wanted to show, for the late Iron Age, for the Celts, also something happens. In the Halštat period, Büchiskala period, so to say, they freaked out. You cannot tell it in a different way. And it normalizes a bit for the Celts. The Celts had it more standardized. They preferred simpler things, not this freaking out. They also had some twills, they had dyeing, they had embroidery, spin pattern, and stripes and checks, but reduced. It's more a standardized thing of good quality, good solid quality, but not freaking out. Yeah, it's the difference between, for example, Baroque period, you know, a Baroque church, and then a later one. This is the same, Biedermeier. One is the freaking out, oh my God, and the other one is this, okay, solid, good quality, standards of aesthetics. And this is the difference between Halštat period and Latin period in textiles, but also in pottery. In pottery, you know, this freaking out pottery with animals and whatever, and oh my God. And in Latin period, they have these wonderful shapes with the lids made, wonderfully made, but standardized, solid. Yeah, it's no other way. And even in their tools they have, you see here, This is Latin period tool for making textile. This is freaking out Hallstatt period. You see the difference. This is super good for function, and this is, oh my God, we are so creative, it's cool, you know? Yeah. So, yeah, that was it. But it's really the question, why does it happen? Why? Because people have some needs. Maybe we can think about psychology or neurosciences. And there is, maybe you know this is from Abraham Maslow. He is an American psychologist, and he had this theory of motivation and personality. Why do people things as they are doing them? And he says that there are a lot of different basic needs that have to be fulfilled. The physiological needs and the safety needs. To feel secure, to feel safe, to feel warm and so on. And of course, textiles fulfill those needs, to feel safe, to cover, to warm and so on. But if humans would have just those needs, then it would be enough just to weave a coarse, tabby textile, cover yourself, and that's all. You don't need to freak out like the Halštat people did. You don't need to have 10 times amount of time to make a super, super fine, super patterned textile with tablet woven border and dyed and whatever. That's complete useless if you just need to feel warm. But Maslow says that there are also other needs, the needs for belongingness and love, to affiliate with others, to belong to other people, to be accepted. Also the esteem needs to gain recognition, to show off a bit, to show your status, show who you are. And also the cognitive and the aesthetic needs. Humans have needs for symmetry, for order and for beauty. This is what makes us as the human race. This is so important. Otherwise we would still sit in the British Color Cave and chop tools made from stone. I mean, this is what we are as human beings. And this is why everything develops. Those needs and just, yeah. And British color time, Hallstatt period, they loved this. And this is really interesting because this really shows us that it's beyond every basic need. This is really the need for beauty, for creativity, for showing off, also for showing off knowledge and skill. And this is really the picture of it. And why was it like that? Because there are different kinds of societies. There are societies that are quite, in our case, modern. Societies that are very straightforward, dynamic, societies which allow innovations and where they can also develop. And for example, here in modern Central Europe, here is from Vienna, Stephansplatz, we are members of such a society where really creativity can spread and where it is supported and allowed. But on the other hand, there are societies that don't allow that. I mean, you might know them. For example, the Amish people, they also live in the 21st century, but they still prefer this, and they don't use handies, mobile phones, they don't use all of the modern technical stuff because they don't like it, they don't allow it, they are very conservative. They have their reasons why they do so. Yeah, and for prehistoric societies, we also have sometimes societies that are very conservative. They are risk averse. And we have societies that are very dynamic, risk takers, like the modern thing here. And the Hallstatt period was really a risk-taker society, a dynamic society where innovations and creativity have been really very welcome. Yeah, just to have the background explanation of this graph here. Yes, And the same we also can see in the metal and in the pottery and in every other things. But now for the material culture, we want to talk about the prestige and representation. How can we take also textiles for this topic? Because usually when archaeologists talk about prestige, representation and luxury, they just talk about metal items. They just talk about jewelry or, I don't know, wonderfully decorated weapons, but never about textiles. And I think we can also talk about textiles in this respect. And for this, I want to talk about the theories of Peter Wells, because he studied the material culture of the Hallstatt culture, and he analyzed the visual qualities on what do we see and how we recognize things, what do we look at. And he says that, I just have to read it. What happens if we see a person or an object? The eyes scan the surface, looking for edges, looking for points that attract attention. Then you look more into detail, not on the flat things. More time and attention is given to complex objects like this here, with highly decorated surfaces. This means that surfaces, edges, texture, color, decoration and glitter are very important for us on how we look at things and what do we think about things. And I try to discuss this now with the textiles from Iron Age in Europe. The surface and the texture. Okay, you have textiles that are very rough and you have things that are very soft. You have thick textiles and you have very thin textiles where you really can look through. And the interesting thing is that you can, all of this is sheep wool. You have one sheep, you put the wool off, and whatever you do with it, how you spin, how you prepare, how you weave, you get completely different kinds of textiles with different properties. You can have a textile that is water absorbing, or you can have a textile that is water repellent. And people knew exactly how to do it, and they did it, even in Iron Age. You can also do three-dimensional surfaces to put some flocks in to imitate fur. It's quite interesting to use textiles and thread and a lot of work to imitate fur. But they did. Yeah, and the color, of course the color. Usually we think that the color and the textile is just something that is the background for other things. Yeah, here. This is one of my reconstructions of the Halštat lady. Here you have a blue textile from the salt mine with the tablet woven item from the salt mine. All of the dress as accessoires and belt and so on is from the graveyard Halštat. Of course, when archaeologists find this in a grave, then they think, okay, this is important and the textile is just the background, not important for itself, but I don't agree. Yeah. What is important for color is that you need sheep that are white. This sounds very simple, but it isn't. Because very early sheep have been brown, grayish, blackish, ugly color. Yeah? This means that you need to breed sheep that are white. Because with this sheep, you cannot dye wonderful yellow textiles. Not possible, okay? You need white sheep. And this is also an advantage that people did during history. Because the earliest sheep in Bronze Age and also in Stone Age have been brownish, and then we see a development in sheep breeding until the Iron Age where they really got real white sheep. But also before, in Bronze Age, they had some sheep that had low pigmentation, and here you see on this textile you have the combination of both. Bright wool and also the other colors. And then you need to invent dyeing. How to dye a textile, because to paint is easy. Painting they know since Stone Age. because you just have a pigment, put some oil or egg or whatever on it, and then you paint. They know it since the Paleolithic when they painted some animals on cave walls. But to make a dye is different, because a dye is something that goes into the fiber and also stays there when you wash the textile. This is the important difference. If you paint the textile and you wash it, then the paint will go away. But if you dye it, it stays. And this is another technological step, because you need a mordant that the dye is fixed. Yeah. In this case, we have this the earliest blue-dyed textile that we found so far in Central Europe. That means north of the Alps. It's from Halštat. It's about 1500 BC. Yes, and then for the dyes, in the early Iron Age, we have a lot of creative dyes, and they used the dyed threads to create a lot of wonderful patterns as you see them. The dyes they used are usually from plants, of course. With the plants it's easy. You just put the plant in water, in hot water, you make a tea, things like that. Then you put the fleece or the cloth or whatever in it, and then it will be dyed. And the mordant, of course, to fix it. But we also have insect dyes. These are small animals, insects, to be squeezed, and then you can get the dye out of it. But this is important because it's very expensive, because the insects are not native here. So, what did I do? Okay. What's about the patterns? I talked about the stripes so far. This is the earliest striped pattern that we have. And we did some reconstruction because we found it exactly in this bow inside. And so we know that it was some kind of veil. And we did a thread by thread reconstruction of this veil and also of the other parts that we found. And it might have looked like that. This is early Bronze Age. It's about 2000 BC. Yeah, Halštat again. Lot of dyes, lot of patterns. You see what can be possible. But what you also see is that we have here a very strict geometric system. It's based on the warp and the weft. It's a geometric system of patterning. We don't have birds or horses or whatever, not even points or circles. We don't have that, because for a normal weave on the warp-weighted loom, you can do the best. What you can do is stripes and checks. It's the easiest thing that just evolved. And also for the tablet weaving, then you have the system that's based on the triangle, but also a geometric system. In detail, how it looks when you make it. Here we have a rigid heddle or another item, but you can make the same textile. It's this kind of bands, and they are in use until today. I mean, you even know them. And the tools that are possible is just some sticks or a rigid heddle, as we have them in Roman period like this. And also you can make a lot of very symmetric patterns. For tablet weaving, it gets more complicated, because you have the square tablets and you can fill different threads into the holes, and then you turn them and then you can make patterns. And here I just wrote one of those descriptions on how to make the pattern. Here you have the band, here you have the drawing of the band, and here you have the pattern description. It's just quite easy to read, but hard to make. So, yeah. There are a lot of different patterns that we have in the Halštat period and on the border to the late Halštat and early Latine period. For example, here Hochdorf, this is really on the in-between. And they have, also based on triangles, based on, squares and so on. Swastika are also common, and this is one of the most important things, a really big textile. You see here the overwhelming creativity of Hallstatt period weavers, what they could do. Here you see something, you see stripes here, yeah? This is a kind of patterning that is quite interesting. It's called spin pattern. Do you also see the stripes here and here? This is made not with color, it's just made with the way in what direction do you spin the thread, because you can take your thread and can spin it in this direction, or you can spin it in this direction. And if you use, for example, 5 of this and then 5 of the other direction and group them, and then you move the textile in the light, then you see the stripes. That means it's just based on in what direction the thread is made. It's a very time-consuming thing. It creates a lot of work, and it's something that you just see when you are quite near or when the person moves in the light. You could not see that in the salt mine, for example. We found the textile in the salt mine, but we are quite sure they were not made for the salt mine because you cannot see it. It's a lot of work, would be not feasible if you don't see it. Yeah, then the glitter and glamour. We want to have glitter and glamour. Back to the theory of Peter Wells, what I told before. He told us that the sparkle and shininess of an object can be important, an aspect of attracting and holding the visual attention. Of course, that means the effect of gold is important. Yeah, do we have that? Oh, of course we have. We have here gold threads, and of course they have been incorporated into textiles. That means gold woven textiles. Not sewn in, not embroidered, but just, you see here, this must be around fringes, for example. Here, this must be in one band woven in. Now we have a project in Vienna where we try to reconstruct the gold textiles, because we try to reconstruct the structures of the textiles. Interesting, this is all Bronze Age. Late Bronze Age, you see here the time frame. It's about 1100 to 1000 BC. And we have so far 15 sites where we found this. And they are all in Eastern Austria and Western Hungary. It's a very small framing where we find it. Here you see the scanning electron microscopy of that. It's pure gold, really pure gold. And it's flat, triangular threads that are 0.7 millimeter thick. It's really wonderful to see and to work with this. And in Iron Age, they also used, Bruno, I also brought this here, of course. It's in, I think in Snojmo, in the museum, is the original. In Algesheim, they also have it. In Homichele, of course, those gold was incorporated, woven into a textile. It was really, that means we have textiles where we have gold threads inside. That must have been the most luxurious items that have been possible, because to make gold threads of this thinness, and you need long threads, it's not easy to make it. And then to weave it, and so on. It means it's really very, very precious. And we have a lot of finds, and also here in Moravia, where a lot of bronze buttons or gold items or whatever are in the grave somewhere here around. That means it was attached, it was sewn onto the textile, and it might be something like here it is from Mitterkirchen, really very precious garments. So, it's really the question now, what is luxury? Can we define textiles as being luxurious for Iron Age societies? I think yes. Not all of them. Not this one, or even not this one. But I think the tablet woven bands, they need so much time to be made. And I think they really belong to some of the luxury edition of the time frame. Also the gold thread textiles have been luxurious in this time. And then we also have the textiles that have been dyed with insect dyes. Because the insect dyes are really an exotic dye stuff. And we know for later, for example, for the Romans, we know that purple dyed, and purple is a shellfish, also an animal dye stuff, was just allowed for the emperor, was just allowed for the very high-ranked society. And I think that the insect-dyed textiles were always just allowed for the rulers of the society. We found them in Hochdorf, okay, this is a princely tomb. We found them in Hallein and in Hallstatt. And you see where the dye stuff comes from, here. And we know that this dye stuff was traded and not a dyed garment. Because how it is made, for example, this here has insect dye in it, and we know that this type of textile with the spin pattern and the twill is not known in this region. They have complete different technology on how to make textiles. That means we know the textile was made here, but the dye stuff comes from here. It's about trading of exotic goods. Yes, and also the tablet weavings. Because, for example, this one, there are the tablet weavers of Instagram, and they are constantly discussing all of the tablet weaves that I find, and because I post them, and then they reconstruct it. They have a very active community, and there's also a hashtag tablet weave Halštat. You just look at that. They reconstruct everything, and then they are discussing on how complicated it is and how long it takes and so on. And usually they say about this band that it's the overkill of complexity. It doesn't look really spectacular, but for every tablet weaver, and even the most skilled ones, like the one in Germany, Sylvia Eisling, she says this is her, so to say, master killer. This one. This is quite easy. And then it gets more complicated. For this band, for example, to weave 1 meter of this band, I think they need 3 days, things like that. And this is just for having too much time during corona pandemics. Yeah. It's also the timing. The timing is a very important thing, because on how do we define luxurious items? Is a valuable item just something with gold and with precious dye stuff, or is a valuable item also a thing that needs a lot of time to be made? Yeah, for example, this cloak here. This is a normal Hallstatt period thing here. 0.7 millimeter yarn. This is medium coarse. It's not the best quality, medium, and also the thread count, medium quality. That means it's okay. For this, because in Denmark there are a lot of very gifted hand weavers, they do those things since 40, 50 years. Anna Norgard, she is one of the masterminds, and they need this amount of time to make this item. Yeah, and this is not one of the fine ones. If you make the same cloak with 0.1 millimeter yarn and 40 threads per centimeter, the time level is like that, okay? Yeah, this is 0.2. This is, it gets worse. It gets really worse. Just to make it clear, In this textile, they have 10 kilometers of yarn. 10 kilometers. I can spin very quick. I can spin 60 meters per hour. 10 kilometers. Yeah. Okay, it's just to talk about the practical things. So, practical things, the function of textiles. What are textiles used for? Of course, we use them as garments. That's pretty clear. But there are also a lot of other uses for textiles that we know from Iron Age. I'm just talking about the archaeological evidence, not about what you could imagine, yeah? But in detail. For example, the garment thing, of course, yes. I don't have to talk about the garment, we know that. Garments, of course, here from the box, they are really impressive. If you have the possibility, go to Copenhagen, to the National Museum Copenhagen. They have rooms full of complete garments just lying around. Oh my God. I'm always, yeah, nearly start to pray in this room. Yeah, it's really complete horse. I mean, you know the stuff. Torsberg, the trousers, the tunic, the peplos of Fultremose. It's just normal stuff. From Halštat, we have some quite interesting things because those things really have been the sleeves of garments, quite nicely decorated. And we have other things that are wonderful, body lice. We have body lice, so we know that, for example, here in this textiles, we found the body lice, and so we know that the textiles have really been worn by people, because a body louse would not live somewhere else without people. Needs the people. And so it's quite interesting for me when I find a body louse in a textile that comes from the salt mine, then I know, okay, this was a garment. It was not a sack or a thing to sit on, it was a garment. But it gets even more interesting because the body lice, here is another one. Body louse, I love them. This is a grave, a child's grave. Here on this bracelet, in the inner side, was a textile. And on the textile was the body louse. Yeah? Usually, we are thinking about when we find textiles in a grave, was this a textile that was really worn by the living person, or was it just a textile for the funeral? Yeah? In this case, it's clear, because there is a body louse on it. That means this was a textile, in this case a tunic, because it was found really under this textile and the body louse was here. That means between the arm and the bracelet, that means it was stuffed in, and so we know it was a long-sleeved tunic. The long-sleeved tunic was really worn by a living person sometimes. We don't know if it was the same person that was buried, but I don't care. It was in some stages worn by a living person. And this is also important because especially for time periods where you don't have written record, you don't know that if there are funeral garments, specific ones, or if people have been buried in their daily garments. This is, yeah, of interest for me. Yeah, for the funeral practice, to stay with that, of course we have textiles, for example, that have been given as a funeral gift. Not as a worn garment by the dead person, but just as a burial good, like pottery or others. And we also have textiles that have been used to wrap items. That means in this case, for example, here Gemeinlebern, there was a textile used to wrap the sword. And this textile was not given as a textile into the grave. It was a wrapped sword. This is a difference. For the people in the Iron Age, they put the wrapped sword in it. They did not put the textile in it. But I find the textile, and that's interesting for me. Yeah, then sometimes we have basic commodities. We have just things of daily use made from textiles. For example, salt mine Halštat, we have here the fragments of bags that have been used to put the salt out of the mine, to collect the salt. And we also found the rope which was used to handle the salt bag. Oops, what happened here? Okay, what we also have is reuse and recycling. We find sometimes in the textiles from the salt mine, we find knots. Of course, they are not in there because they were made like this. That means this is a secondary use, recycling, deliberately recycling. And this is the more clear when we see it like that, because here we have a tool handle, it was broken, and then a textile, a really wonderful pattern textile, was wrapped around it as a makeshift binding material. That means recycling. Oops. So, more recycling. More recycling. Marks of repair. You see here this wonderful patch. I love it. Because they really tried to respect the pattern. I love it. This is so sweet. Repair. Marks of repair. We find it really often. So marks of repair, sometimes also mending, just the stitches and so on. Yeah. Here, yeah. And sometimes they used textiles that have been worn out, and they did something completely different things with it. In this case, we have here 3 or 4 layers of this textile. This textile has been a garment. We have here the primary seam here, and we have this wonderful spinning pattern. That means it was a garment before, and then they put this together somehow with very coarse stitches and a hole in here, and the hole has a function because this was something like that. It's, you put your finger in there, wrap this around your hand, and then you have some protection for your hand for handling the rope. That means it's like a glove. They made a glove out of the old rags. This is charming, charming, charming. So now I'm nearly at my end, and now I want to talk about the Vídni cave, of course, because that's why I'm here, and about some research for textiles and also music archaeology, because we did some research on some of the items that are in the Natural History Museum in Vienna. Vídni cave, you might know, here is the cave. It's really one of the most important Iron Age grave ritual places that we have in Central Europe. It was, I don't want to say too much, but I think it was more or less the Vatican of the Halštat culture. I mean, yeah, really, you can say it like that. It's a big ritual site. It's a very specific place. We don't have something like that is somehow comparable to that. It really must be the Vatican, yeah. So, it has a lot of things in it. The bronze bull here. Yeah. For those who might not know it, I give it through, but I want to have it back. And the original one is this size, okay? The bronze bull. Then we have wheels. We have 4 or 5 or 6. How many? Wagons? 6? Every time when we talk, there are more. I learned 4, now there are 6. Everything is okay. We have human sacrifices, we have animal bones, we have organic material, we have a lot of jewelry and so on, iron working tools. That's really interesting. From this ritual cave, this dates to 600 more or less BC, but Susanna knows better than me. And a burning place. And what's interesting for me, this was found here. Hey. What is interesting for me, we also find a lot of textile tools, and we found basketry and textiles. These are, bundles of thread that have been found, and also felt, because it's the only site where we have felt. That's really, really interesting. And we can also compare the bundles of thread with the spindle whorls, and then we can figure out on, yes, of course, that the size of the spindle whorls and the thread that you can make with it relates to each other. And this is really very interesting for us as textile archaeologists. And what we also find are items like that here. And we have a music archaeology research project, the metallic idiophones between 800 before Christ and 800 after Christ. And then we really make studies on all of those sounding implements and how it sounds like and how it interacts with garments. This is one of our research now. And so we had to reconstruct the garments that we can test on where to put the items and how it sounds like. And of course, for the reconstructions, I used the Halštat textiles, of course. And I also used the titular art. Here, some of them depicting women. And we have usually long dresses, we have checkered design, we have bands and borders. We usually have veils on the titular art. And we also have sometimes things around the ears. You see that here. And we have from the British Color Cave those earrings. They are really this big. Gold and, big. And we can compare it with the titular art here, how it was worn. Above the ear or in the ear. You can do both. Yeah, and so we combined everything what we know and did this. This is our British color princess. It's not the princess that you can reconstruct it. This is the handmaid of the princess, so to say, of the British color princess. But you see here all of the elements. The long dress, the checkered design, also the bands and so on, and the veil, and those items here, and also all of the items that have been found in the cave, including, of course, the sounding elements that we put on the belly. Those are, of course, different interpretations of the British color princess, but we made the handmaid. Yeah, so this is from Zdeněk Burian. You might know him. He was inspired by the wonderful Czech researcher Karel Absalon, and this is a modern reconstruction that is in the cave or here. Where is this one? This reconstruction, Susanna? Isn't it? Okay. Yeah. And here we have ours, but you can do a lot of different reconstructions, and we never know what will be the right one because we cannot beam back in time. It's not possible. But what now to the scientific part we did. What we did is that we would like to make statements on the sound, because the sound of things usually we don't think about. When we are talking about how people, about prehistoric people, we usually think about, how they looked like. But they had a sound when they moved. They did something. And also the sound of the people when they moved with their garments, with all of these items. And so we did analysis of the sound in a sound-reduced chamber. And here you see all of this technical detail of those items on the acoustic elements, the megahertz and whatever. It's all published. I can send you the literature if you are interested. And you can also depict the sound in this tonal. It was made by specialists. The frequency analysis on how is the sound. For example, how is the first impact on the sound and how long does it sound in time? Yeah, the decibel, the loudness, the tonality. Yeah, and I think they even tried to find what it is in the tonal system. Is it a da 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 da? Well, It was really interesting to talk to the people, and they also did some movements and dances, and they tried to reproduce the dances and the movements on, how they looked on the titular art and on other depictions. Movements like this and movements like this, and then they moved, and then they recorded on how the sound of the people was like with this ensemble or with the Halštat Tint Napoli in comparison. This is a much more charming sound than this, and the next step will be now a psychoacoustic analysis on the psychological effect of the sound to people. And they do that with the University for Music in Vienna. They do these psychological studies on the sound of the British color objects and in comparison with the Halštat objects. I'm really looking forward to read this. Yeah, but I think what's important for us here and also for the British Color Cave and, for example, for the rituals in the British Color Cave, that we have to imagine that there was a sound. And this is important. And that this sounding jewelry created something. Because usually you have the sounding jewelry if you have it in the graves, just in the very, very rich graves. That means you have some acoustic markers, you have an acoustic identity of people according to the sound they make when they move. Yeah, a social status. And this sound can attract people. I think in these cases it was for attraction, but it can also repel people or marking danger or whatever sounds are doing. It's very interesting, and we are not at the end of thinking about that. But I think to study the sound of prehistory is also something quite interesting. And if we are talking about dress, in this case the British color dress, and its possibility to communicate, to tell something about the person, then also we have to take the sound into account and the sound field that is made by the persons when they were moving. And if we imagine the rituals at the British Color Cave, when all of those people came with their jewelry and the sound, and then maybe, I don't know what prayers or whatever happened in there, then the sacrifice, okay, I don't want to talk about that. But it's a creation of sound. So, yes, now I have to conclude. Oh, I talked 1 hour. I'm so sorry. I did overtime. Just to conclude, in briefly, I wanted to focus on the material culture. I just wanted to show you wonderful textiles, of course, but also the sources of textiles. What do we know and why do we know the things that we know about textiles in prehistoric Europe? And I know that that there are not so many like we have in pottery or stone artifacts, but I think we have a good basis of knowledge. In total, for the Iron Age in Central Europe, we have more than 1,000 textile items. That's really a lot. Because usually people think, even archaeologists, oh no, there are some few. But I think there are more than 1,000. And so I can do statistics with them, you have seen that. I can show the impact on society. I can show the impact on the technical development. I can also show the impact on how the textile production influences all of the habits of people, and the textile products influenced everything in the Halštat period. And this I just wanted to present it a bit. There's even much more. And also about the design and the creativity behind and the needs of the people to have aesthetic things around them. And I think the textiles, especially from the Iron Age, are a manifestation of creativity and desire for beauty. And those are my final words. So, okay, that's all. Thank you. Good.